Welcome, Ched, to the first episode of the Hustle and Heart podcast. It is my absolute pleasure to have you on as the first guest here. You and I go way back to when we met at, it was a networking event through a business networking group called Connecting GTA. We met there about maybe 5 years ago, and since then we've been connected in many, many ways. So the reason I wanted to do the Hustle and Heart podcast is to appeal to the business audience, business owners who are running around, they're busy keeping the lights on. They don't have time to look at themselves as a product or a service or how to market themselves. And a lot of people just don't have that information handy. So I think by having people like you on the podcast, will raise awareness. It inspires people. It brings information to light that even they didn't know about. And hopefully the Hustle and Heart podcast is going to help many business owners. So today's episode is going to be on storytelling. And as you know, I'm a storyteller at heart. I've written many stories, and it's very, very near and dear to me. So you recently have embarked on a fantastic journey. I think if I were to have spoken with you a year ago, you would not have thought that this is what you were going to do. So before we start, I'd really love for you to introduce yourself, because I don't think I could do you justice. You have been there, done that, and your story is absolutely amazing, and that's one thing that kind of connected you and me is your initial story of when you came to Canada and how things unraveled and how things unfolded, and here you are today. So start with your intro, let everybody know who you are and what you're doing, and I'd love to just jump into what you're doing right now as the CEO of Gold Pill Group.
Thank you so much, Doreen, for welcoming me here, having me on your first podcast. It is very, I'm just overwhelmed. I'm thanking you so much for actually introducing me to this at a time where I'm really pushing my own personal brand. Now, I can, I'm not going to go into all these stories about what I've been doing over the years, because it would just take the entire episode of your show. But you are correct. My story is one that's not unlike a lot of immigrants that come to this country and find themselves in a position. When I was, obviously I came here with my mom when I was a child, and then going through the school system, there's an adjustment period, and getting to the point where I'm about to graduate high school, and then having some, having the people that are in your lives that's supposed to be directing you in terms of your teachers and your mentors, that they're discouraging your journey. And fortunately, at the time, it was shattering to have a guidance counselor tell me that, what you want to do with your life is just too far-fetched. And that kind of, I'm not going to say I was inspired. I was scared to death. But, after moving past that and then getting into the real world, I saw that there were opportunities for anyone, for an immigrant, for, someone who maybe you're not blessed with a lot of wealth, but you have a passion, you have a drive to be able to make a difference.
Right.
Yeah. So that's how I started out.
Yeah.
And of course, many years later, as you say, Gold Pill Group is a organization that I forged just after the pandemic, when I had to pivot. And fortunately, that's really brought me to discover what I'm doing today.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that's a story unto itself, as you as a child, being told by the guidance counselor who you looked up to for guidance, to be told that, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I think that is still driving you today. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that story, that going back to that time is part of you in that, it's driving Ched to, I'm not going to take it laying down. I'm still going to prove to that guidance counselor that I'm worthy and I'm able to do this, and I'm so proud of where you are today and what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about how your time in Africa, because that's really weaving into the Gold Pill Group and what it stands for, and maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that, is how does Africa fit into the Gold Pill Group, and what is your vision now with this organization?
Oh, thanks for that question. It's something I'm really passionate about. Initially, I went to Africa a few years back on a consulting mission, right? It was just to consult with a particular company. And once I landed in Ghana, something just, it's funny. You said something about going back. A major term and a major part of my branding, part of the Gold Pill branding, is a word called Sankofa. Mm-hmm. And Sankofa means returning back, going back in order to move forward. And when I first landed in Ghana, there was a feeling of being home. There was such a welcoming by the people, but more so there was a sense of a spiritual awakening, something that happened to me when I landed on the continent for the first time. And, what happened, I was only supposed to be there for three, maybe 4 weeks. And I ended up staying for 6 months, lived there for 6 months. And it's, I traveled throughout the country. I learned as much as I could. I ventured into this spiritual journey and found something deep inside of me that kind of redirected my passion, and it redirected my goals. So as you said, the Gold Pill Group is something, initially it was a group of consultants here in Canada, consulting in Canada. But I've kind of turned and kind of pivoted a bit to make it more consulting of with businesses and with individuals landing or wanting to go back to the continent, mm-hmm. right? And meaning it's for diasporans, people that are of the African descent, or anyone else that want to experience where the origin of humanity came from. Mm-hmm. So that's the whole thing here. I organize group tours. I do, I consult on opening up a business, or if someone wants to relocate, I assist them with that process too.
Wow, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. When we're talking today about storytelling, and storytelling, people underestimate the power of storytelling. Mm-hmm. And for business owners especially, how do you reach your client? How do you connect with your client? How do you draw your client into believing in your product or your service? Stories move us. Stories influence us. Stories inspire us, to take action. So all the more reason storytelling for business owners is critical. And it's something that every business owner needs. They need to embrace storytelling, and they need to use storytelling as a means to reinforce that trust with their clients.
Right.
And when people nail that storytelling element, the rest falls into place. Your client not just buys from you, but your client goes out and tells other people about you. And that's what you want, So when I think about what you're doing now with the Gold Pill Group, besides the consultancy aspect of it, I'm really fascinated by the whole story about Africa. The story about how when you landed there, you had a certain mission in mind just for 3 weeks. You had no idea how it was going to hit you like a ton of bricks.
None.
When your feet touched the ground and there was that awakening, I think you used that word awakening, that connection to your motherland, as it were. Can you tell us a little bit about that story, and then I'd love to hear more stories about the people and, more about Ghana and what you do there.
Yeah, well, when I originally went, I knew no one on the continent personally. I mean, of course, I had conversations with people going down, and I wasn't sure what to expect, mm-hmm. right? Then once I arrived, what was beautiful was seeing people like us, like me. It wasn't all the ads on all the billboards were surrounded with people of color. All the people that I am connected with, in the financial district, they were people of color. The police, there was a sense of a jovial back and banter, to lack of a better words, with the authority. So there was never a threat. Here, it's a little bit different. Of course, Canada, US, there's always some intimidation aspect when you're confronted with the law enforcement. There, I didn't find that. So for me, that was a big part of the connection. The other part was when you kind of look back and you evaluate your story, your origin and where your people came from. For me, that was the important part. When I first visited the door of no return inside the Elmina slave castle, it was extremely emotional. It brought me to tears. And I saw many other people going through the same journey. And I felt at that point, there's something stirring inside of me. And I just wanted to share that with as many people as possible. So that kind of led me to saying, you know what? I'm going to go back and I'm going to tell this story. And I had no idea how that story was going to impact others because I was just sharing what's happened. And I felt to this day, every time I tell this story, more people want to come on the journey. And it's because it's something that's going to impact them too. And and to your point, it's just telling what happened to me. It's just sharing my story that was able to elevate my brand to a level where it's now, others want to share in that and they want to sit and listen to more of this story and they want to start their own.
Right.
Yeah.
When you first told me about this, what you were going to do about a year ago, I think, and you said, Doreen, I think I'm going to take a group of maybe 5 people with me and do a tour in Ghana. And I said to myself, what? Why?
Yeah.
I didn't really see the whole concept. I didn't see the vision, only because I've not been impacted or touched by it. But I can surely see, from where you are now, from that first group of 5 people, you have now, how many tours have you already booked and how many people are going?
Right. So we've booked several tours already. The 5 turned to 10 and then the 10 turned into 30 and that 30 turned to the most recently was 50.
Wow.
So, and for 2026, we already have 4 tours booked.
Wow.
We have Kenya, Tanzania in March. We have Egypt and Ghana in September.
Nice.
And Ghana again in October and in December. So, we just have a variety of people that are now reaching out and they're interested, but the Canadian contingent are now very much interested. We're influenced by a lot of what's happening in the US, but
Sure.
People here, the diaspora here, the ones from the Caribbean, they're interested in learning about their journey as well. And I encourage people, it's not just for the diaspora. It's for anyone that wants to find out, because I think all our history is intertwined. And the rise of what's happening in Africa now, I think people are looking for opportunities, but they're also looking for connection. And I think that's where you can find that deep connection is with what's happening there now.
Yeah, I've heard Africa is a hotbed for all types of opportunities, from real estate to the medical field to investments, and it's nice to see it rising. Whereas before, people would just kind of not even acknowledge the possibilities of what could happen there. And this is thanks to people like you who come back here with the stories, and you tell people no, it's unbelievable. I went there, I saw it firsthand. I made connections and it's fantastic. You got to come see it for yourself. Now, circling back to the storytelling element of this, of what you're doing with these tours and how there's this rush of people who want to jump on this bandwagon now to go and check out Africa. What is the story that is igniting in people's minds and in their hearts to say, yeah, I want to go there and I want to check it out? What do you think is at the crux of it?
I think it has a lot to do with social media. before our stories were being told by others, right? So the impression that we all had of Africa, it's such a myth. And if you look at the development that's happening, in particular the West Africa, you have it it's all over. I can't even just isolate to West Africa. Sure. East Africa, you have, the northern region and South Central Africa as well. So, the stories that were always told was about the hunger, the starved, the diseased. It's, the people who are uneducated. That was all such a myth because some of the most brilliant people are on the continent. But obviously, as they termed it, developing world, others would, kind of look at it. I know I have a group of friends now that are still hesitant because of the stories that was implanted in them. Right. And as we know today, those were stories. And, true to your point, stories were being told. Now you have people, like you said, of myself, and you have others who are on the continent who are actually bringing their stories to the internet, bringing their stories to the media so we can judge for ourselves. And it's not just one-sided. It's not just a negative part, because I'm sure you can, if you dig deep enough in terms of what's going on in Canada, or if you have the control over the media in which is here and in the US, then, your perspective is being forged for you and you're not necessarily being given the full truth. So I say to people, you know what, go visit, go try it, go see what's happening and judge for yourself.
I've seen some of the video clips that you post on social media, and what I see is people who are so moved by the experience. They're so touched, they're emotional, and I couldn't grasp onto that, and I'm thinking there's something there. There's something there that's kind of hard to explain, but you have to go and experience it for yourself.
100%.
And then come back and then tell people the story of what you experienced. What is one thing? I know there's probably a million things that you can talk about, but what is maybe one or two things that the people who take your tours and they come back, what do they tell you was the most meaningful for them?
Right. For most, it was the awakening of this spiritual journey. So it was like, okay, I had no idea that I needed healing. I have a lot of theories when it comes to healing of the soul or of your spirit. But this is something I don't even have to tell you. We can try and tell you, but until you arrive there, you really won't understand. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is how vibrant and how happy the people of Africa are. In spite of their maybe their socioeconomic conditions, they've found some kind of peace within them, whereas we have a difficult time finding it in the West, right? Here, we're on a hustle, day in, day out. We're trying to make the next buck. We're trying to put food on the table and then wake up and start again. You're being hassled by, people that are selling you things here, selling you things. You don't even know. We never stop here. So there, it kind of, people have an opportunity to stop and breathe. And it's something I think we all covet. That's why I say to people, what you're looking for sometimes here, you may be successful, but you're still not happy because you're missing a connection. When you get there, there's a connection that happens, not sometimes just with the people, but with yourself. You you look deep inside and find out, hey, this is what I truly want, is this peace. So I think that's where, by most part, people, come to me and say, man, I can't believe how great that trip was. It's more than just a vacation. It's like I said, it's a spiritual awakening. Right.
That's really interesting to hear. What about the people who are in Africa right now? You take your group there. People mix, they mingle, they ask questions, they discover certain things that they didn't know existed. For the people in Africa, what is the story that resonates with them? What is it that they want people to hear about?
Right. It differs from country to country, but I can speak on West Africa, and more specifically because I spend the most time in Ghana, is that they want people to see them as human beings, right? As the warm, wonderful people they are. Now, of course, every country have their challenges, but besides that, they want you to be able to accept them for who they are and not try to bring the Eurocentric behavior to them. These are things that I think bridging a gap means kind of bringing some of your best qualities and accepting a cultural difference. But what I find is some people here, because of our indoctrination into the Eurocentric behaviors, we go there and we judge. Things are not necessarily as easy to come by. And these are just conveniences, not life-changing things that we take for granted. And when we go there and we're not getting that, then, sometimes the complaints happen and that kind of thing. But by most part, I think once you've settled, you'll realize that the people are wonderful. They're easy to get along with. They're happier. They're more at peace.
Right. So as a business owner yourself, how do you see storytelling tying into what your plan is for Gold Pill? If you were to give other business owners advice in terms of using storytelling as a mechanism to grow your business, to connect with people, what is, something that jumps out at you that you'd like to share?
Well, it's just proof in the pudding. I came back and shared my story, and then people just wanted to be part of it. So I struggled with, okay, how do I brand this? How do I make people more aware? And someone said exactly that to me. Just share your story. So I went on, I started with Instagram and then of course in LinkedIn, and I just started telling people about my experience, about what happened and how I discovered me in the journey of business. Right. And the more they saw that, the more they said, well, that's pretty good. And then more people wanted to experience it. So for me, people are so tired of the fabrication through either through AI or through some of the other perfection that my son used to always tell me, Dad, when are you going in front of the camera? Just go and record something. He says, you have so much to share. Why don't you just go and record? And I was like, well, it doesn't look good. And I was always afraid to be in front of the camera. Right. But then he said to me, people don't want perfection. People want honesty. They want you to come and tell the truth. They just want you to be you, because that resonates with them as being just an average person. If it's imperfection, just like with raising our kids, right? If we hide our scars from our kids, if we hide our mistakes from them, they will never think that, they'll always think that it's unachievable. They don't think that they can achieve the same thing you as a parent or surpass you because we've hidden all the truths. We've only told them the good parts. Right. And they haven't seen the mistakes that we've made. So in this, I can share my mistakes. And, and the problem is it's not focusing on the mistake. It's how you grow from it. And I think that's part of what storytelling is. Storytelling, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. Right. How did I start? What did I do next? And how did this make me better or put me on the right path? And of course, like I said, my story is I went there to evaluate an insurance company. It was an evaluation for an insurance company. And perhaps somewhere in there, I started to realize that there is me inside of this. And then I just share my story, and then more people want to see that. So it started out as tours, and then I just converted that into, here, let me do the consulting. Let's help people land. Let's help people get there, evaluate, judge for themselves, and then see what the next move is.
Right. You're right about sharing the authenticity of moments. And people want that. In today's world, everything's painted, everything's made to look better. Even through AI generated posts that are out there, everything looks perfect. People's hair, makeup, their clothing, the weather, everything is made to look perfect. And I don't know why people strive for seeing that perfect world when we don't live in a perfect world,
Right.
you know? And I think people need to share more of those imperfections to make us look and feel more human. And I think this is what drives people to want to hear stories. They want to hear the ugly truths, you know, and then they want to see the rising from the ashes. You know, yes, I was knocked down. And when I fell down, I didn't just stay there. I rose up again. And that transformation in storytelling is everything. You know, this is why people go to the movies. This is why people have a Netflix subscription, is because they want to see those feel-good movies. You know, the poor, down and out, destitute, average Joe, and all of a sudden something happens and he or she is transformed into something wonderful. And we have a passion for that deep within us. You know, and I think this is what you have uncovered when you go to Africa, is you see the imperfections, but you also see the beauty, and you see what's possible if you give people a chance.
Right.
If you open the mind, and you've done that for me, Ched. You know, I was a closed mind. I was a closed book. And you said, no, Doreen, open up your mind. I'll never forget that conversation where you showed me a different side to Africa and what you were doing and what's possible, you know? And that's something that I really admire in you, for taking that leap of faith and just going there with an open mind and seeing, you know what, the fantastic opportunities lie there and what can come about for anybody. Like, you don't have to be a person of color. You can be anybody who wants to see something different and learn and grow from it. You know, I was really excited when you told me that you were taking your younger son with you on this last trip.
Yeah.
You know, he's young. You and I are of a certain age. We will not divulge our age. But we see things differently. We process things differently. We feel things differently. But for Cameron, as a young lad, what was his takeaway? Like, when you were looking at him, when you were watching him through your eyes, experience this, you know, awakening in him, what was going through his mind, and how did he come out of this experience?
That's a very good question. I think, and you're right, I was watching closely to see how it affected him. And, you know, he is a very observant and very analytical mind, right? So in watching him, he's also, you know, very, how should I say? I think in being so observant, he's also very practical, right? So he's not just that person on the emotional scale up and down, and he can really articulate his thoughts clearly and well. So for me, when people got emotional and we're talking about certain things, he tempered that by giving a true objective opinion on everything. So I watched him. For example, I watched him where we walked in the enslaved river. Now this is a very traumatic journey for most people. When you walk in that river, it's called the River of Last Bath. And this is where they would take the enslaved and they would kind of wash them down before they took them to to be trucked off by the transatlantic slave ships, right? So branded. So they would be washed and branded and then sent off. So when you get it, something happens when you step foot into that river. And as a group, we all stepped in there, and I watched them closely. And even though I've experienced it before, watching him and the emotional toll that it took on him and my wife and, you know, some other good friends and family members, it's like 50 people walking in a river knee high and then just busting out in tears.
Really?
So it was extremely emotional. And watching him take that in, it made me realize that they're a lot more connected than I would have thought, right? Because I would think sometimes, and sometimes we all think our kids are not as connected to the previous generation. But that's why these kind of journeys are important. You go back and you learn, you understand that, but by the grace of God goes I. And if it wasn't for people that survived that journey, I wouldn't be here today. So he had the understanding of that, and I think by most people who go through that, it's not even traumatic. It empowers you at the end of it, right? Okay. It's empowering. And those are the kind of things, like I said, it helps you to grow. Right. And you asked the right question is, well, how do I rise like the phoenix? Mm-hmm. That's how you do it. It's by experiencing things that you haven't experienced before. That's the only way you're going to learn, right? Is by doing something you haven't done before. Mm-hmm.
So how has your relationship with your son changed, or has it changed through this experience?
Well, we were always very close, but I think it helped me to see the maturity in him even more so. Mm-hmm. So I think we don't have to exchange as many words anymore. So there's a closer understanding after we've experienced that.
Right. So, I mean, I'm assuming him as well as other people in your group who go on the tours with you, when the tour is done, do they all want to go back again at some point?
100%. I think, first of all, we go on the tour as strangers, and then you become friends, and it's almost by the end of it, you feel like your family. Mm-hmm. And, all the groups that I've done so far, we all have a chat group that remains today. Yeah. And people are constantly asking me, hey, Ched, when's the next trip? How can I be part of this? And, and some of those, the other trips are, people want, because in 10 days or 14 days, you can't see everything. Mm.
Yeah. And this is the power, again, going back to this, why we're here today, right now, talking about storytelling is, yes, we are talking about storytelling for business owners and to show people how powerful and empowering storytelling can be. Mm-hmm. What you experienced and what you're going through right now with the Gold Pill and taking the tours down in Africa, that's one element of the storytelling, because you and your people come back and tell the story over and over again, and you're reaching more people, you're connecting with more people, and the feeling is growing. And that's what we want. This is why storytelling is so impactful, is people remember stories. Mm-hmm. They don't remember statistics. You could tell them that, my business grew by 80% in the first year. We have 65 different products on our shelf. People don't resonate with that. But when you tell that story about your mom or your dad or your grandfather, whether they've been through a war, they were hurt, or they came back with nothing, and struggled and built an empire, that whole rags to riches story. Mm-hmm. People want to hear that. Mm-hmm. People want to connect with that because they want that for themselves. Would you agree?
I agree. I think, obviously, by most part, most businesses go through those trials and tribulations. And once businesses learn to share or connect with the part of them that made them do what they're doing, rather than just the statistics describe your success or failures, right? Mm-hmm. The stories tell you how you got there, how you succeed or how you failed. Mm-hmm. And I think that those are connecting points, right? People want connection more so than they just want statistics. Right. And so I agree 100%. I think that's how, that's how you move the needle.
Right. I recently conducted a workshop for an organization on storytelling for business owners. And before starting the workshop, I had everybody in the audience close their eyes and think back to a moment in their childhood and think of a story that was shared with them either by a parent or grandparent, aunt, uncle, whatever the case may be, and to remember a story that was told. And it was amazing that, the people in the audience, however old that they were, could think back to when they were a young child and they remembered explicitly the story that was told all those years ago. It still stayed within them.
Right.
And as I watched their expressions on their face when they close their eyes, you could see the emotion passing through their facial features. Some were smiling, some were very serious, depending on the story that they were told. But it really hit home for me. It's like storytelling is just not just a word; it's a feeling. And this is what we need to do more of. We need to tell those stories.
Yeah.
The other thing that I do, as you know, is I write people's stories. I write about their journey, their ups and downs. It's raw. It's human. People open up to me because I'm a stranger, and they tell me things about them that they normally wouldn't share with their family and friends. And then when I write their story, they're amazed at their own journey and their own transformation. Because sometimes even they don't see it themselves. But when their children and grandchildren read their stories, well, then the earth moves, because they didn't know that about their father. They didn't know that about their grandmother. And that deep, profound respect for that person is elevated, and I think it inspires even the younger generation, I think, to step into that realm of, if he can do it or she can do it, I can do it.
Correct.
Or I should do it, And I think this is the story that is coming from you now through your Gold Pill group tours, is how are you going to change people? What sort of change are you hoping to instill in people?
Oh, well, I think it helps people to write their own story. It's funny how we're talking about storytelling to build business, but it's also building an individual. So for me, what I'm hoping for with the tours is that people are able to heal. They're able to find and see a part of the world that they may not, because a lot of people have Africa on their bucket list.
Right.
But most people, they know of one thing. They know of just, they want to go see a safari.
Right.
Where this is far more than a safari. Not only is of course I talk about the spiritual part where you walk the path of your ancestors, but there is so much more. There is so much, that there are beautiful monuments that you want to see. There are statues that are erected from the heroes of that we don't see here, we don't learn about. And these are people that made the difference in the world, not just the difference in Africa. But we don't hear those stories. We hear other stories that are, again, if you're not the one telling the story, your truth is not necessarily going to be told. You have, just beautiful beaches and you have buildings that are constructed to just, that are a marvel that we think only exist in Europe. But, in these other countries that they're there but they just they're not marketed. They're not advertised.
Right.
I found that in Africa. I was able to find anything that I can find in North America, in Europe, in South America. You can find it in Africa. And it's such a vast place, and there are just so many different cultures. It's 54 different countries on one continent. There's nothing else like it. And there's a different experience in just about every single country. So that's what I want people to wake up to. That's what I want people to understand. And now it's being brought to the light, because not only is technology going to be part of the awakening of the continent, but the youth movement that's happening there, because they have the youngest population in the world. So right now, that's what's going to move the world. The youth are the ones that's going to really take us into the new world.
Yeah. And I can see you finding a niche in that, with the youth, because you're such an amazing coach, Ched. I've known you for years, and your coaching is second to none. You're able to move mountains, honestly, with that. And if you are able to touch lives in that way, I just can't wait to see what you're going to do next. So tell us a little bit about what's next for Gold Pill. What's on your horizon there?
Well, for 2026, we do have some of the tours, but as I say, the tours are just introduction. I have several consulting and speaking engagements that I am going to be following up with, in which I'll consult. In some cases, the government of Canada wants to learn more about what's happening on the continent.
Amazing.
I think that movement is not enough. There are other countries that are seeing the movement that's happening, but Canada has been slow to react. Of course, we have a share of our own issues here that we're trying to overcome with the orange guy next door, but we're moving. So that's the first part. The second part is we're building something which would be the equivalent of Expedia in Africa. It'll give you an opportunity to curate your own tour to your liking. Wow. And that's something that hasn't been there before. And so we're trying to move the needle as much as possible.
That's excellent. You're really opening a lot of doors and making it easier for people to get there. And I think people are missing out by not having that experience. But you, through your storytelling and through the stories that your guests have brought back with them, it's making it so powerful and empowering as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think you and I can talk all day about your experiences, your journey, everything that you're doing. Gold Pill is also morphed, from when you started it about 2 years ago, and what you started out doing is so different from what you're doing now. And that's the beauty of running your business. And in fact, I spoke with someone yesterday and I said this to them, that you may start out at point A, but through your collaborations, your connections, your learnings, you automatically change and your business evolves and your business changes route, your business changes direction, and it becomes a beautiful thing, and you realize that you're not limited to just one thing, that you can do so much more. And that's the power of storytelling and through storytelling. So any last words from you that you'd like to share before we...
I would. I mean, you kind of said it all. I think when I started Gold Pill, it was, I had a particular vision, and those visions haven't changed. That the end goal hasn't changed. Perhaps the path that we take there change, and that's in business, especially business in the new world, is that sometimes it's going to be technology that's going to influence your change. Sometimes it's going to be your passion, or sometimes it's going to be in my case, it was an awakening by going back to remember how to move forward. And that kind of really opened up my eyes, and it helped to build my story so I can share that with you.
All right. And I think the word is Sankofa.
Sankofa.
Great. That's going to be my new word for 2026. Sankofa. Moving back to move forward, because only then can you see things more clearly.
Yes.
And what you can build and uncover. So I'm really excited. I'm excited for you for 2026. I'm excited for me for 2026. And everyone else out there who has a dream, who has a vision, tell your story, and don't just keep it to yourself, but impact others along the way as well. So Thank you so much, Ched, for being here today. It was an absolute pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you.